Good morning and welcome to Derriere Farms, where today we're going to be taking a look at how to achieve your optimal nitrogen levels in Precision Farming 22. The reason I say optimal is because your optimal nitrogen level will boost your crop yield as well as your environmental score. Whereas, if you under-fertilize and don't put enough nitrogen down, or you put too much nitrogen down and you burn the crop, you don't get an optimal yield, plus you do environmental damage. So fertilization works pretty much the same way as it did in Precision Farming 19, where you could either use liquid, solid, fertilizer, or manure or slurry. And to achieve the optimal level, you would use variable rate fertilization. Basically, what variable rate fertilization does is it takes into account the crop, the amount of nitrogen that crop needs, the soil type, and the amount of nitrogen in that soil. And then it applies the appropriate amount to bring it up to optimal levels. We get initially our nitrogen level for a particular field and a particular soil type from our soil samples, and we did soil samples in a previous video, or you can just purchase the soil maps. But anyway, here's what I mean. So here we are on silty clay, and it only has 10 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen in it naturally. Not a big deal because we don't have anything planted. Now we'll move over to this wheat field where, just like the other one, we're in silty clay, which only has 10 kilograms of nitrogen in the ground as a base, but wheat's optimal nitrogen level is 160 kilograms. So it needs us to apply 150 to make up the difference, 150 kilograms per hectare. As there are different soil types in this field, that amount is going to vary slightly. And variable rate fertilization, the computer and the tractor will track the soil type, the crop type, compare it to the soil map, and apply the right amount of fertilizer. So hopefully we always end up with the optimal amount. Okay, backtracking a little bit, we all know from playing the base game, even if you're new to precision farming, that there are a couple of ways of applying fertilizer or nitrogen to a field. Like we said, we've got the traditional ways of using either a solid fertilizer spreader, a liquid fertilizer sprayer, a manure spreader, a slurry tanker, or if you happen to have one, a seeder with a fertilizer tank built in. All of these implements are perfectly capable of automatic or variable rate applications and will apply, if necessary, the optimal amount of fertilizer. So, a seeder that has a fertilizer tank, as it's driving along, just like it did in 19, in 22 in theory, it should do the same thing. I haven't tested it yet, but it should, if we use that wheat field as an example, it should take the fact that it's already got 10 nitrogen, it needs 150 more to bring it up to optimal levels. So as it's seeding, it will put down 150 kilograms a hectare of fertilizer. That should be optimal for the field. Now, of course, you don't have to have your seeder or spreader or sprayer in automatic mode. You can have it in manual mode where you not automatically, you have to manually select the amount that's going down. Based on the fact that human reflexes are slower than a computer, I would recommend leaving it on automatic so it will start putting down the correct amount as soon as it hits that spot in the field where it needs to change the amount that's being put down, because the soil type is different. Okay, makes sense so far, so good. As fertilizer, either liquid or solid, is expensive, Giants recommends using either a manure spreader or a slurry spreader to put down a base amount on an empty field. So it will bring, and I think the base amount standard is between 50 and 60 kilograms per hectare. So you have that base amount. So we had 10, we now have 60, and it needs to be, well, I'm going to use oats as an example, which only require 100 depending on the type of soil. So for oats, you would only need to put down and pay for 40 kilograms a hectare of either solid or liquid fertilizer. You could use your slurry spreader or manure spreader to bring it all the way up to the optimal amount, but we all know how quickly manure spreaders and slurry spreaders go through their tanks. They empty very quickly. So unless you have a lot of cows, you are going to run out of slurry and manure fairly quickly. Okay, so far so good. Everything should be as clear as mud. That's how you get your optimal amount. You bring your soil up to, again, I'm going to use oats as 100 because it's a nice round number. You bring your nitrogen level up to 100 and you get your optimal yield. And you could get that in the base game, in Precision Farming 19, like I said, from seeding and fertilizing at the same time with the same implement. Now, here's the part that's confusing me. Is Giant's blog about crop sensors. They talk about how nitrogen levels vary depending on the part of the field. Well, we already know that depending on the soil type. It can vary depending on the season. And then they go on to say, sensors are the only way to reach optimal fertilization levels. Because it scans the crop as you go. And then the blog continues, and then they get into the fact that sensors, crop sensors, will only work, and I should have stayed in the field where the wheat was, will only work when the crop is tall enough, like our wheat was, for the sensor to be able to detect the density of the crop and determine what its nitrogen level is. In fact, they go so far as to suggest like crops like wheat, like canola, and barley that are all planted in the fall, that you wait till the spring when they've grown in 1 or 2 stages, and you fertilize in the springtime using the sensor. And okay, that makes sense to a degree. But if your fertilizer, well, we say we use the seeder with the fertilizer tank on it, it should have put down our optimal level. So is the sensor going to detect anything? Is there any point in running over the field again? That's the part that I'm confused about. I guess the only way we will know or find out is by experimenting. So, while we're on the topic of sensors and equipment, I'm going to pick the 6250 because it has plenty of horsepower for fertilizer spreading. And I am going to take that down to the workshop. And we are going to equip the first type of sensor on it. Well, $420 to repair. Okay, I didn't think I'd used it that much. But we'll go ahead and we'll customize. So we don't need to change any of that. That's all standard. It stayed at the 350. I just checked because sometimes it'll reset back to the basic settings. For in-game, and these are tractors that Giants have made, not necessarily modded tractors, but Giants have only applied it to their vehicles so far, is the Iseria Pro Compact from John Deere. No, not from John Deere, for John Deere and other tractors. And you simply select yes. And it tells you detects the real nitrogen demand of your crops. While driving with the sensor over your field, you'll get a more precise information of the nitrogen that is required. With this information, the fertilization will be more accurate and results in a higher yield. Thing to note is the Iseria Pro Compact, the one that fits to the mirrors, you can see it right there, will only work during the daytime. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to customize the tractor with the sensor. There we go. We can see it attached to the mirrors now. The other type of sensor is the Iseria Pro Active sensor, and it costs a little bit more money. It's $23,000, or well, say $24,000. And you can get it in a couple of configurations. Standard, it just attaches to your front 3-point linkage. If you're using a smaller tractor with a fertilizer spreader on a 3-point hitch, you can add a weight to it to offset the weight of the fertilizer spreader behind the tractor. If we were using this on something like the 6250R or the 7R, we probably wouldn't need the weight because the tractor by itself is heavy enough to handle a rear spreader without a weight. As far as actual fertilization equipment goes, this will work in theory with a manure spreader, a solid fertilizer spreader, and a liquid fertilizer sprayer. And I believe you also need this one if you are going to use a slurry spreader. And I'll show you why. So slurry tankers will go to, what was the Garrett Cott. That was the last one that came out with the last free content update, not the most recent one. So I'd always, I just like BKT tires. So it now gives you, for all liquid fertilizer sprayers, the John Deere manure sensing option. So you select yes. Now this doesn't actually sample the amount of nitrogen in the field. That's why I say you need the sensor. What this sensing device does, it detects the nitrogen in your manure. As the nitrogen in manure is never homogeneous, this sensor guarantees the application of the same nitrogen amount all over the field. So what it does is it detects how much nitrogen is in any liter or 1,000 liters of slurry, and it adjusts the application rate accordingly to either increase or decrease the amount that is being put down based on the amount of nitrogen in that amount of slurry. So that's why I say you still need the sensor to sense where the crops are at. And then this device you need to sense the differences in nitrogen in the slurry or digestate itself. So we'll just turn this one off for now. And what I'm going to do while we still have some daylight is I'm going to start fertilizing the wheat fields. Okay, we're full of fertilizer. As you can see, nitrogen mineral fertilizer application, because we're not in the field, it's not detecting anything, or we could be potentially in a field where a soil sample hasn't been taken yet and it wouldn't detect anything anyway. So right at the top, you'll see that the comma either turns on or turns off the automatic application rate. Now you also have to turn on the sensor with Alt-B when you're in the field. Let's go ahead and go to the field and we'll demonstrate. It's not far, so bear with me. So we're going to turn the sensor on, Alt-B, even though I'm not lined up yet. No harm. we're going to leave the automatic application rate on. And it's already detected the wheat. Okay, so it knows it needs to, as we'd said, look, apply 150 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. And I'm not lined up very well, but money is no object because this is my test map. Why is nothing detected yet? There we go, 150. Wheat on silty clay. Let's go for a spin. There you can see, because of the sensor, it's adjusting between 140, 145, 150, 155 kilograms per hectare. 160. So the sensor's doing its job, I guess. And because our soil type has changed, it has now jumped all the way up to 190 application rate. So I'm going to let this spread. Well, we'll take a look in the on the precision farming map. And we'll see it is now green for optimal. So that's where we want it to be. It's no longer red, where it's way down in this range. It's now optimal for that crop. And I'm just going to turn it off because I want to show you one more thing. If you did watch, or you didn't watch my other videos about soybean, I believe this field here is soybean. And you can see that it's detected that it's soybean, which requires no fertilizer whatsoever. Because even though it's only at 20 kilograms a hectare, soybean, much like oilseed radish, does not require any nitrogen, but rather it puts nitrogen back into the soil. So I'm going to set this back and finish up that field, and then we're going to do one more thing. Alright, so we're back at the main farm, and we're in a field of oats that just got plowed today. As you can see, based on the fact that it's loam, it comes with 25 or 35 kilograms per hectare naturally. And I started spreading a little bit back here just so we could check. And it seems to have put down, regardless of the sensor or not, it must be using, as the game says, the soil sample. But it's still put down the perfect amount according to our precision farming information screen. So I'm just going to set that to finish spreading this field. Oh. Come on. And this is the problem when you don't remember where you finished. Okay. Okay, so it does turn out that there's the problem. Because there's nothing for it to detect, the sensors won't detect it, yet it knows somehow. Oh, I don't have the sensors on, that's why. Alt-B. We'll just do it manually. Like I said, it seems to, as long as the sensors are on and the automatic application rate, if you see it starts and it stops again, it's detecting what's in the field already. So I'm doing this to simulate what would happen if we had put fertilizer down along with the seed drill. Unfortunately, I planted this field yesterday or the day before in preparation, not thinking about the fact that I might need to put fertilizer down on it. I'm just not sure if we are getting... you can see the spread on the right is a little bit further than the spread on the left, but it's putting down a variable amount. And if we try and go over where we've already been, there, it automatically turns itself off and won't turn back on. So let's take a look at the map. It looks like, yep, the whole field was fertilized. And running through the field, it looks like we achieved the perfect nitrogen application. So again, that must have been based off the soil sample. What I'm going to do with that field is once it's grown to a higher state, I'm going to go back and I'm going to run through it and I'm going to check to see. I don't know if this field has enough crop growth yet to detect. Now the other thing is, it says this sensor only works at nighttime. Yep, I figured that was going to happen. We'll turn the engine off and we'll get out. So we're now a little bit too dark for the crop sensors to work, and we would need the other ones. I'm not too worried because we still have a couple of days with seasonal growth turned off where we can fertilize these fields. And we're finished down here in the wheat field. It looks like it's on loam, has applied 200 kilograms per hectare and done it perfectly. I won't ask it to do the other field because we only put the daylight sensor on this. I'll do the other field another time, but you see how that works now. What I am going to do is I'm going to go grab a tractor with a manure spreader or a slurry tanker, and I'm going to show you about this field. Silty clay, 10 kilograms nitrogen. It doesn't know what crop's going to be in there. That's why it's not giving us a reading of good or bad. Okay, I'll be right back with, well, we'll use a manure spreader. But as I said, the slurry tanker with the sensor and hooked up to both the slurry tanker or spreader and the tractor will work just as well. Be right back. Okay, I'm back with the manure spreader, and I decided to buy the fancy sensor just because I wanted to see what it looked like. I turned it off and I turned it on, and it still wants to apply 60 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, which is the manure amount depending on soil yield potential on silty clay. So let's just start this up. Like I said, put the fancy sensor on just because I wanted to see. The description in the game says it flashes at nighttime. And it doesn't appear to. So I guess it flashes beams of light in real life, but in the game, no, it's not doing it. If we look at our manure map, I only want to do one strip. And you can see we're still going down fairly quickly. Actually, we're not going down as quickly as I thought we would be. Let's look at our soil sample map. And we want not soil types, we want nitrogen levels. See, and it's brought it up to around the 60 kilograms per hectare mark. That means if we were using wheat as an example, which, what did it require, 200? Means we would only need to apply 140 kilograms per hectare of solid fertilizer. I'm just going to get out and double check to see that's what it's applying. Yeah, 60 kilograms per hectare on silty clay. Okay, stop this. And I have my reasons for that. A, because the video is running long already. Yeah, okay, I'll bring you guys back in a second. I'm done experimenting. So the reason for the delay was I wanted to see if oilseed radish works the same way as soybean, where it doesn't require any nitrogen in the ground, which it shouldn't because it's a supplement for nitrogen. And looking at the precision farming box on the bottom right, 10 kilograms per hectare is perfect for oilseed radish. What I'm curious about is what it's going to yield what it's going to yield when it gets cultivated in, and what level it's going to bring nitrogen up to. Is it going to be the same as putting that manure down where it brings it up to 60? Or is it going to be a different variable? So that pretty much does it for today's video, because I don't want to run too long. But in the next video, hopefully later today, if not tomorrow, we will cultivate in the oilseed radish. Where's my soybean? Right here. I don't know how close that is to being ready to harvest. It's fairly close. It's not, well, not as close as that, obviously, but it's got a day or two left. So I want to see what the nitrogen levels are when that is done. And I also want to see, once this gets to a reasonable growth stage, whether we actually need to go over it again with the spreader and the sensors, or whether by essentially doing what we did, which was fertilizing right after seeding or right at seeding time, like a seeder with a fertilizer tank would, whether that's going to be enough. So, like I said, this is very complicated and there's a lot of information to take in. So we'll leave it at that. And the next time we will take a look, like I said, at the oilseed radish, and we will take a look at this field, the soybean, and we'll also talk about pH levels and maybe variable rate seeding, depending on how long the videos take. I hope you learned something from this video. Remember to give it a like, and remember to subscribe if you find this series useful, because I'm going to be making plenty more in-depth videos about precision farming, so you can get the maximum yield and hopefully the highest environmental score. Have a great rest of the day if I don't see you later. Take care, Jay.